Casey Neistat recently sat down with Jeff Wittek and for the first time really opened up about the David Dobrik documentary he made that premiered at South by Southwest last year. It hasn't been released for the public yet, and it's one of the things they talked about, and the comments honestly didn't really love what Casey had to say about David or the documentary in general. Casey said that he wasn't trying to hide it, but he was waiting for the right distribution opportunity to come around for the documentary to go on, because he doesn't want to just put it on his own YouTube channel. He said that he did think it would eventually come out though, but it's unclear when that will actually be. But he's once again talking about the documentary this week as he sat down with Logan Paul for an episode of Impulsive, where he went into even more detail about this documentary and his feelings on it. And honestly, I'm going to say that the more that Casey does interviews where he's talking about this documentary, people are only going to get on him way more to just put it out, because people hate hearing about stuff and not being able to actually see it. And he was already not getting the best reactions from being on Jeff FM of people just like, put it out, put it on your YouTube channel. And they also just didn't like that he still has this sort of care for David, even if it's in just like the slightest bit. But in this episode, he did go into a little bit more depth about his feelings, feeling weird about the idea of putting it on his own YouTube channel and the fact that part of him doesn't even want to put it out at all.
And like, we had some really interesting distribution opportunities that kind of like came and went and weren't dealt with well. And then like very recently, and I don't know how to say this without causing a bunch of trouble, like very recently we had a very, very interested party that was a perfect place to distribute it. And it fell apart at the 9th hour because of political reasons. I believe because of political reasons that had nothing to do with me or the movie itself, but somebody involved with selling it was fired from his job at the last minute. It kind of put us in a compromised position. I don't know that that's why the sale didn't go through, but it's one of these things. And like, I think I use as an excuse these third-party factors for why it didn't get distribution, for why it's not out there. But I think the real reason is like, there's some part of me that like doesn't want to release it. Like, I have a YouTube channel with 10 million viewers. I can put it out there.
Do you think the ball has rolled too
No,
far
I
down
think it's
the
probably
hill?
more relevant now than ever.
Casey goes on to further say that he feels weird about putting it out because this documentary did ruin his friendship with David. And it sounds like when Casey was making this documentary and did decide to talk about everything that was going on with Jeff and also the Insider article that came out, that maybe David had this idea that Casey, being his good friend, would sugarcoat it somehow. But Casey did let the story speak for itself in this documentary, and it doesn't make David look too good. And because of that, you know, him and David fell out, but that's also kind of the reason why he doesn't want to put it out, because it just feels like he low-key feels bad that he did that.
I don't know. I feel weird about it. You know, I feel weird about it because the impact it had on my relationship with David, which I wasn't naive to. Like, my goal with that was just to sort of tell the truth and give him an opportunity to tell his truth, which I believe he did. But, you know, I think that there was some expectation that the movie might protect him. And instead, I think the movie was just a very honest view of what happened. And, you know, like he and I haven't really spoken since then. And I knew that was going to happen, but I don't deal with that well. There's not many people in this world that I like love. And I really love David Dobrik. And I'm really conflicted about that. So all this just to say that, like, I think my own sort of up emotions about it have had a negative impact on my willingness to let that documentary be seen. And look, it's not like I'm trying to protect him. I think there's a lot of truth in that movie.
Casey also talked about this whole documentary taking a turn and this just not being what he signed up to make. He wanted to follow along on David's rise to fame, and it wasn't supposed to be this documentary where his career took a turn, but it did, and Casey felt obligated to tell the story as close to what happened as possible, but he didn't want all of this to have happened. But he did finish the documentary, and only a few have seen it, and Casey is dealing with the guilt of it not being out. And he said that he's in communication with the victims, and having the story understood by people, they feel like they're no longer invisible. But with it not being out publicly for the world to see, that isn't really the case, and he's just really conflicted about being the one holding on to it.
Like, I'm not afraid of conflict. But in this particular case, it's like, it's not about me. And I feel like I don't know, I've stuck my head into something. Like what I always say, and this is a cop-out, and I'm embarrassed to be saying this, but it is the truth, is like, I never signed up to make that movie. I wanted to make a fun movie about this kid I love named David Dobrik and his success. And then all this that was horrifying to me. And I felt an obligation to the world to tell the truth. And I think this movie did that. And then at the end of that, I too was just like, who am I to be this? Like, why do I have to be the arbiter here? And I think because of my personal relationships and the intimacy level I have with the characters involved, it left me feeling strange. And I will say, like, part of the shame I have in admitting that is that, like, it does reveal things for the victims, the real victims. And David Dobrik's not a victim at all. He's not a victim. Natalie's not a victim. But there are victims in this story. They don't get to have their story told because of my insecurities, because of my cowardice and not wanting to put that video out. And I'm hyper conflicted because of it.
With how conflicted Casey is about this, I'm surprised he didn't just scrap the documentary idea when everything took a turn. I mean, I know at this point he was already filming for years with David, but I mean, seriously, it's not like he's put it out for the world to see yet. Like, yes, some people have seen it at South by Southwest, but it kind of feels like he might as well have just not finished it at this rate because people aren't watching it. And it seems to be causing all these internal battles within him because he chose to continue filming the documentary. I mean, yes, it's good that he did finish it and wanted to tell the honest truth about David and his entire career and everything that happened. But since it's not been released, it kind of defeats the whole purpose of him seeing the story through. But I mean, he does claim it will come out eventually, but I don't really know how true that is with how much time has passed.
The movie will come out. It will be seen.
You think so?
Yeah. I'm not keeping it from coming out. I my dream is to have it out there, and this is something I'm willing to do tomorrow, but my dream is to have it out there, and to have it out there via a third party that's not me. Like, I would love for a news channel, like pick one of the news outlets, have it on a streamer that says, like, something news, put this out. That, I think, would contextualize it in a way that make me feel very comfortable with it.
Is finance the only obstacle there?
No, there's no obstacle. I would give it to a news channel.
Well, then how does
the
this
dollar.
clip not get picked up and that news channel doesn't call?
Call me. Call my agent. Let's paper this tomorrow.
I like how they did ask him if finances were a factor in this, because a lot of people were feeling like Casey was waiting for a distribution opportunity so he can cash in a check for all of this. And he was just waiting for an offer. He claims that that's not the case, and he would love to just give it to whoever wants to stream the documentary. And I kind of believe him. I mean, it sounds like Casey just wants nothing to do with this documentary anymore, and it's why he doesn't want to put it on his own YouTube channel. I think he doesn't want to be involved any further than he has to be, and doesn't want it to be like Casey Neistat drops documentary on David Dobrik on his YouTube channel. I think he wants people to say, have you seen the new David Dobrik documentary on Hulu? Like, he doesn't want his name to be in the sentence at all, because even though him and David aren't talking anymore, I think he somehow feels bad still, and he doesn't want to be the one that's like told this story. That's kind of just what it feels like as he's explaining why it's not out yet, and like his relationship with David and how it all went down. I think he just doesn't want to ruin this non-existent friendship even further.
That's a part of this, is getting into nuance, but I think it's a part of the movie, is that, like, I didn't do reporting. I didn't break stories in this movie. This movie is literally about a news article that I didn't write that came out about this kid, this YouTuber. And I covered what happened after that story came out. I didn't write the story. I didn't create the things that happened. I was this observer, this sort of neutral observer, watching it all happen in horror, in trying to capture that story. And that's what the movie told.
I mean, it'll be really interesting to see if this documentary actually does get seen by the public, and I wonder if he will kind of change up the ending beforehand, because like I said in my last video where Casey and Jeff sat down to talk about all of this, the way the documentary ends is with David deciding to come back to YouTube in 2021, and Jeff was in that video that he came back with, seemingly sticking by David after the accident. But as we all know, now they aren't in communication. But Casey did mention maybe adding a text card at the end with an update, and maybe it'll say, Jeff and David no longer speak anymore. David ended up leaving YouTube. But I don't know. We'll just have to see if this thing ends up coming out. I want to know all your thoughts in the comments. I love you guys so much, and I will talk to you in the next video. Bye, guys.